Reconvene our open session. We're going to call this meeting to order. We're going to start with roll call. If you would, please, Mrs. Voss.
All right. Councilmember Baldino.
Here.
Councilmember Giroux.
Here.
Councilmember Perstuck. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyles.
Here. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to have the invocation led by Pastor Scott Tannehill of the Bridge Church. Following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Giroux. If you could all please rise.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you, Lord, that as we involve you, you're involved, Lord. I thank you, Lord, for this council that you called to wisdom, Lord. You said if we ask for wisdom, you will give it to us, Lord, to wisdom to guide and lead this community, Lord, for prosperity, Lord, for health, for wholeness, Lord. And Father, I just ask your blessing over them and their families as they continue to serve this community, and that, again, this community would prosper. In your name we pray. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Pastor Tannehill, and thank you, Councilmember Giroux. All right, we've got a special presentation this evening. Chief Lee is going to recognize some of the firefighters here. Chief Lee.
Good evening, Mayor, Member City Council, Fire Chief Dina Lee. I'm here real briefly to honor a couple of our members in the fire department. My command staff came to me this year and they had an idea of an internal way to reward our members that do something above and beyond the call of service. Our motto is courtesy and service, and so this is going to be our first time issuing a courtesy and service award. Anyone in the fire department can nominate a person, would go up through the chain of command, and then we would present them with a special honor. As you know, the Spark of Love Toy Drive, we've been doing that for over 30 years. This year, I don't want to get this number right, we collected the most amount of toys we have ever collected, 4,469 toys to 7 nonprofits in the South Bay. 2 key people that were in charge of this. Takes a lot of work, a lot of logistics, a lot of coordination, and the 2 people that I want to honor tonight with the first Courtesy and Service Awards are Captain Nate McElroy and Management Analyst Vanessa Arias. You can say something about this work.
Okay. Thank you. It's an honor to be recognized for this, and it's actually an honor to help out the community and give these toys to the kids in need. So.
Thank you very much, Captain. Appreciate it. That's astounding. 4,000 plus toys. Yeah, absolutely incredible.
It was a group effort. All the guys standing in the back of the room helped me sort toys, and it wasn't just me. It took all of us.
Outstanding. So. Thank you all very much. Let's do a photo. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay, she's here. Yes.
She gets applause.
Right at the beginning, can you just briefly describe what you did for the Spark of Love?
Yes. Hi. My apologies. I didn't know we were going to be so prompt with Spark of Love. Well, this year I did more of the admin side of things. I vetted the nonprofits and worked with them to make sure we accommodated as many toys as they requested within the age groups that they needed. Unfortunately, an age group that always suffers is the teens. And, you know, we did try to accommodate them as best as possible. Also helped, I also helped coordinate with local businesses to get them boxes so they can do their own donations in their own offices and coordinate the pickups with the engines. I'm sorry, I ran over here. I'm a little out of breath. So it was a lot of the admin side, and then in previous years, I would actually do the toy sorting and distributing to the nonprofits direct. So we've gone up quite a few in the past years, from about 1,800 toys when I first started in in 2018 to this year, 4,400 toys. So it's been a huge increase, and that's been amazing for the surrounding communities. So yeah.
Fantastic. A few photos. Here we go. Okay, everybody's looking good. Oops. Here we go. And 1, 2, and a couple more. Oop, wait a minute. There we go. And one more. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes special presentations. Wonderful job. Thank you very much for that. We are going to move on to public communications. This is related to city business only. And let's see, do we have an indication of how many people would like to speak? We have a public hearing matter, by the way. So if you are wanting to speak during the public hearing matter, which is related to the community block development grant, that'll be later.
So Mayor, we have 3 speaker cards.
3 speakers. Okay. If we could call the first person up, that'd be great. 5 minutes total for each person.
All right, Adam Aylesworth.
Good evening, folks. Thank you for getting my name right, by the way. So I have been surveying residents in this town, trying to figure out how much support we could garner for a bike park project, which would be kind of like the skate park, but for cyclists. You know, a safe place for kids and adults and whoever to ride their bikes and not have to deal with traffic or, you know, anything like that. It would be a kind of a skills-based thing with jumps and you would call them skinnies or, you know, little skill building paths. So I talked to people in town, outside of town, and we got a 99.5% support rating on everyone we surveyed for that. I've been working with Jay Heschler. He's kind of been my backbone on figuring out how to present all this stuff because, you know, he's a mountain biker as well. So, and yeah, that's just keeping it simple. I wanted to get it on the minutes and kind of just bring to your attention that this is something that we're trying to see how much support we can get for in town. That's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ellsworth.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Next we have Robin Miskolc. Miskolc.
Hungarian, yes, not easy. Thank you, though. That was close. First of all, thank you to the council here today. Starting a new year, willing to serve the El Segundo community. I appreciate it. I know the time and efforts that goes into this. This is a town I love, enjoy being a part of. My daughter goes to El Segundo High School, and I'm a resident of El Segundo myself. I'm here actually with the hope that an appeal to the council to expend a little more of their energies and attention to the DEI committee here in El Segundo. I'm familiar, I've been keeping up with as much as I can with folks that I know and in and out of the committee's work, but I do fear that as a citizen very invested in how the committee is supported and what the committee has been able to do, I'm a little bit out of the loop. Often the meetings are at times where I'm working or I have to be with family. And so I appeal to the council today to consider enabling the recording or live streaming of the DEI committee meetings, which I believe the committee itself would support, though certainly, you know, your communication with them is welcome. Like I said, a lot of us can't attend the meetings, and I believe, much like the city council aims to make their meetings available to the public, so should the committees that they charge, since they are there to serve us and the public. I hope that making those conversations available to the El Segundo community, the long goal here is to enable more substantive participation in the debates and directives of the committee. And I think, making them more transparent and available to people in the community would be a good solution to that. Finally, I just wanted to voice a concern about how the committee is organized, how it continues to be reorganized when folks have to step off and people are brought into the committee. I know that a lot of the precious energies of the committee has been spent in these changes of committee members explaining the very reason why a DEI committee exists, rather than acting on the kinds of principles that such a committee was formed for, and that council fully supported and ensured was developed, right? So I do ask council to make some more efforts, more, reaching out to the committee members to communicate with the DEI leadership themselves to develop what I think would be a better plan for enabling the committee to do the work that the council charged the committees to do, whether that be in the form of a budget, enabling the committee to move forward on things, or giving them the power to have a firm input on who is chosen as committee members from here on. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mrs. Muscogee. Did I get that close? Muscogee? Say it again.
Nice. You just add the Z in there.
McCulsey. Oh, that's not so hard. Okay, thanks.
And, well, I just wanted to add, Ms. Scalzi, that we do have a DEI committee meeting, a special meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. right here in City Council chambers. Or not in chambers, I'm sorry, in the conference room here. Just so you know. Okay, John Pickhaver.
Hi, good evening, Council. My name is John Pickhaver, and I'm a member of the Sweat Equity Alliance, and I'm also here to talk about the DEI Committee. These aren't new issues that I'm bringing up, but it's a new year, a new council. You look it up there, Councilman Baldino. I wanted to talk about transparency and a budget. Like Robin just said, there are a lot of people engaged in what this committee does, and they want to keep up with what's going on. And I really think we should record these meetings. I've spoken on this previously. I've led calls to action on this matter before. At one meeting, the DEI committee itself unanimously agreed to put it on their agenda. They were all in favor of recording these meetings, yet that item never appeared on the agenda, and we were never told why. The other thing, I'm not sure will be the case this year, but last year I know in the 2022 legislative platform, the city's #1 goal was to embrace DEI. And I think that's a very admirable goal, but I think it reads a lot like lip service when it's not backed by action. And I think one way to really put, some energy into that is to give the committee a budget to carry out the work that they're doing. At the end of last year, I was in a conversation with a very active resident here in the community. They're not involved in the Sweat Equity Alliance, but they share a lot of the same goals and mission. And they had an idea for the city, and I said, oh, you should bring that to the DEI committee. And they kind of laughed and said, oh, the DEI committee doesn't get anything done. And that hurt to hear that's the opinion that people have here in the city. I think creating the committee was a wonderful idea, and it had so much potential, but that's the belief that's in town right now for people that are paying attention. A lot of what the committee does gets received and filed, and it reads like heard and ignored. And I don't want that to be the attitude that people have about the committee. I want to see action from the council of support, proactive signs of support. And one of the ways, again, is making those meetings accessible via recording and providing a budget to the committee. And this is a committee I've applied for a number of times. This isn't a grievance or anything, and I debated bringing this up or not, but I think the last time that I was rejected for a spot on the committee council member that alerted me. He said, don't get discouraged. You know, as a private citizen or resident, you have much more potential to make an impact on the community than you did if they were on the committee. And maybe that's true. I'm not gonna, knock the impact I have made or can make, but I hope that's not the case. I hope that people that are on the committee, empowered by the city council, have the resources they need to make an impact to carry out the mission. So I can be up here less and I can help them do the work rather than just coming to you and asking, hey, can we help them out a little bit more? Let's just support them together, and I think we'll be a better city for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickhaver. Any more come up?
No, I don't have any more.
Okay, thank you. That concludes public comments. Mr. George, would you like to comment on any of the 3 public comments?
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Ellsworth's comments on the bike park, a potential bike park project, I would actually direct him towards our Recreation Parks and Library Director, Ali Mancini, who's our acting city clerk, our assistant city clerk tonight, but also our director for Parks and Recreation. Please meet with her and discuss your survey, and we'll take it from there. Thank you. And regarding DEI committee comments from the 2 speakers, I think that, as Ms. Voss stated, they're having a special meeting this week. I encourage you to attend those meetings, share your comments and concerns. And then also, I believe our next meeting, we will be bringing all the bylaws for the committees, boards and committees, to the council for discussion at that time, so maybe another opportunity to speak. That concludes the comments regarding the speakers. Before I get into the Hyperion Reclamation Plan update, Mayor and Council, if I could request a little reordering of the items this evening for your consideration. If we could move after the consent calendar item, staff presentations 8 and 9, to right after the consent calendar, and then do the public hearing after those 2 staff presentations, and then the remainder of the 10, 11, and 12 presentations, if possible. And then also, we'd like to move to a later meeting, item number 14, which is the assigning of council members to serve on committees for various intergovernmental and local agencies.
Great. Any objections from my colleagues? No? Okay.
Okay, and as I've done now for the past 4 or 5 months, I'd like to give the council and the community a brief update on items related to Hyperion.
Mr. George,
yes.
it might also benefit a couple people in the audience at a minimum to talk about committees and budgets, and that we don't typically establish budgets for committees. I think the one exception is the Arts and Culture Committee, which doesn't necessarily even have the jurisdiction over that budget, that they make recommendations. So do you want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. The only commission that does have a budget would be that commission, and the others currently do not. That's
And then there was a request for recordings of meetings.
And none of those meetings are recorded for any of the commissions, other than, I think, planning.
Planning.
Correct.
Is planning required to be recorded because of state law? Has that just been a norm for the city? Do you know?
It's been a norm. It's not required. And because of the nature of land use decisions and the type of decisions made by the planning commission are more likely to be subject of litigation, because they are making, again, land use decisions. In some cases, they're final decisions unless they're appealed up to the city council. And so more formal record keeping has been generally adhered to with planning commissions. And that's true throughout the state. One of the issues that's come up, and it's not with regard to all the committees and commissions, is the idea of recording them, and it's not really a legal issue, it's a budget and staffing issue, and that is something that, if, you know, I'll stay advocate. It's like, I've heard the discussions, because there are about a dozen committees, and so, you know, to staff those and record those, there's an expense tied with that, and so if that's something council wants to talk about, that's really a policy issue of you know, doing that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
I know it's not an agendized item, so we're not gonna debate it, but if we do have a bylaws meeting on it, can we at least get an idea of what that cost is? And if it's legal to do one and not another? If one committee requests it and one is ambivalent, if there's any issue on that, that would be informative.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll take care of that. Okay, regarding Hyperion, as we've known now for quite some time, Hyperion's primary tank covers are in need of replacement. In preparation of that work and to mitigate odors, the Hyperion staff is planning to clean out primary battery tanks actually they already started on Monday and will continue through mid-March. The tanks will be cleaned one at a time, Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Mitigation measures will be in place to minimize odors. Also, since we last met, 2 notices of violations were issued by AQMD for public nuisance to Hyperion, one on December 26th and another on January 10th, this past week. And the next Hyperion Citizens Forum meeting will be held virtually via Zoom on Thursday, January 19th, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. A link will be provided by the Sanitation District on the day of the meeting. The AQMD Hearing Board is scheduled to hold a meeting on January 25th to once again hear a status update on implementation of the order for abatement relating to the nuisance odors. The links for the meeting and the agenda are also on the city's website. Regarding the Hyperion Perimeter Road project, at this point, the project is 70% complete. Work is ongoing, but due to the rain, the sheet pile installations will now be expected to continue through January 26th. However, work will only occur on weekdays, no weekend work. Also, recently, just before the holiday, city staff met with Congressman Ted Lieu's staff via Zoom, where he shared that he thankfully was able to include in President Biden's omnibus bill a $3.5 million dedication solely for repairs at Hyperion. And we're working with his staff on how to appropriate those dollars. And then finally, your city staff were finalizing a proposal with a third-party expert who specializes in wastewater treatment plants to assist us in all these issues regarding Hyperion. So that concludes my update on Hyperion.
I'll add to that I've been receiving inquiries about the status of the city's litigation against Hyperion. This was initially authorized this last summer. There have been a lot of communications between my office and other agencies and interested parties about this issue, and there was some hope, if you will, that these other agencies and parties who had expressed some interest in participating in or helping to resolve these issues that the city's having because of the lack of maintenance and proper operation of the plant, these issues might get resolved short of litigation. It doesn't appear like that's going to happen. So at this point in time, we're committed to getting a complaint on file against the city of Los Angeles regarding the Hyperion plant within the next 30 days, and we'll just proceed. We've spent a lot of time trying to work with parties and just have really not been as successful as I would have liked to have been. So unless there's any question on that, I have one other announcement.
I do have one comment about the Hyperion, the funding. So they have done an assessment, and how much money will it take to that they need to actually redo the Hyperion? It was like how many millions of dollars? It's like 15.
Well, they are currently working off of a budget approximately $100 million.
100 million. So that 3.1, 3.5 million, 3.5 isn't really going to do too much to that.
No.
And so I just want to make sure everyone's
Right.
clear that, you know, the residents received a rate hike about a year ago. And their rate hikes are post, right? They don't anticipate, you know, they come after the fact. So should we anticipate that the residents be receiving another rate hike in the near future because of this large bill that they've got coming? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is if Ted Lieu's only giving $3.5 million toward that, that's really not going to satisfy.
Yeah, in the scheme of things, it is a small number, but his staff is informed that was the largest amount that he's dedicated in his district towards a particular project. So it may not be a lot, but if we can target those dollars toward things that we've been, it may not pay for covers, for instance, but in terms of some of the other requests, like adding the testing.
I just want to make sure that our residents
Right.
understand that that $3.5 million isn't going to go very far.
Right, well.
And that there's a huge amount of work,
Mm-hmm.
$100 million.
Hundreds
worth
of
work
millions, yes.
that needs to be done.
Correct.
And so we should anticipate that we would be picking up some of that bill.
And one of the things the Air Quality Board has been, they've been holding hearings about once a month on the status of these violations. And in response to the complaints, the general response by the City of LA employees has been, we've got $100 million in projects that are planned, and the board has really focused is very focused point and is explained to the City of LA employees that they've heard them say the $100 million frequently now, but what they haven't said is, how are you going to spend it, or in what ways are you going to spend it that's going to fix the problem that the city of El Segundo is experiencing? And that they want, and are expecting, I believe, this next hearing, whether they'll get the answer or not, I don't know, but they really want the city of LA to explain that to them and the public as to how they're going to fix the odor problem. So we'll watch next week and see what happens. The other announcement I wanted to make was the city of El Segundo, in the case of William Hatcher versus the city of El Segundo. Mr. Hatcher is a retired, non-sworn former employee of the fire department. He's a fire inspector. He had sued the city for essentially age discrimination, and the city prevailed on that lawsuit last week. And so that has now come to an end. I will also tell you that the cost of defending that lawsuit was just short of $250,000.
And how many similar lawsuits do we have pending?
There are 7 more outstanding personnel lawsuits.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to procedural motions. Item A, read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Do we have a motion to do so? Drew, so moved. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Persick, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. On consent, any considerations there?
Abstain from item 1.
Okay. Any polls? None. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve everything but item B1, or item 1, I should say, under consent? So moved. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Persick, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve item 1, which is the council meeting minutes, approving those. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3.
Aye.
Oh, yeah, 4-0. Thank you. I was like, yeah, you were here. I was
Ryan.
trying to figure out, is we not here also? All right. We're good on consent. Moving along here. Okay, we moved up items 8 and 9. So we're going to go to staff presentation 8, factual response to Police Officers Association, otherwise known as POA, communications to the public. Mr. George.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Well, this item will be a tag team, if you will, of staff participation. I will lead off the item and then also include our Human Resources Director, as well as our Police Chief, and then possibly even our City Attorney. This item is you state, Mayor, a factual response to POA communications to the public. Really tonight is just for information purposes only. We will be presenting, as it says, factually based information related to the ongoing negotiations between the city and the POA. This fact-based information is also in response to literature disseminated over the past year related to the differences between the city and the POA. The presentation will include, as I shared, our HR director will present information related to the numerous proposals offered by each party and the specifics associated with each of the fiscal impacts of each of those proposals. Our police chief will share staffing levels to be discussed, as well as all equipment, materials, other budgetary features that have been approved by the City Council over the past several years. And as the council knows, public safety has always been a high priority for the city and has always been a top priority in every strategic planning session that we've had, and ultimately has been adopted by the council. So again, tonight's information item, really the goal is to be fully transparent in what is information flow, the flow of information and discussions over the past year. So now I'll turn it over to Rebecca from Human Resources to share some of the information.
Thank you, thank you, City Manager Daryl George. Rebecca Reddick, your Human Resources Director. Mayor and members of the City Council, as the City Manager stated, tonight is a factual presentation, so I will lead the PowerPoint. The current Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, as we like to call it, with the Police Officers Association, is for the period October 1st, 2018 to September 30th, 2021. So we began meeting and conferring with the POA on wages, terms, and conditions for a successor MOU in September of 2021. We met 5 times between September of 2021 and January of 2022. This first round of negotiations ended in an impasse declared by the Police Officers Association on February 9th, 2022. Following the impasse, the POA requested from the Public Employees Relations Board, also known as PERB, for a fact-finding hearing. The hearing was held on June 20th of last year, and it was heard by a fact-finding panel, which included an impartial chair and then 1 representative each on the panel from the city and also from the Police Association. The fact finder recommended a 9-month term with an across-the-board 3% salary increase and $100 monthly increase to the health allowance. These non-binding recommendations made by the fact finder were not implemented by the city. The fact finder's report and recommendations is available on the city's website, and there's also a link in the staff report tonight. We began meeting on the second round of labor negotiations on March 25th, 2022. After more than 6 months of negotiations, the city issued its last, best, and final offer, also known as a LBFO, on October 7th, 2022. The POA made a counter to the city's LBFO, and then the city responded to the POA's counter with an amended LBFO, which offered 2 options to the POA. One option had the binding arbitration, which was in the original LBFO, and the second did not have the binding arbitration. Approximately 3 months later, the POA issued, the POA provided the city with their proposal number 6. And I will go through all of those in detail on the next slides. So the original LBFO was a 4.5-year term. It included $10,000 of retention bonus. It also included a total of 10.5 total salary increases which was spread 3%, 3%, 3%, 1.5%. There was an increase to health by $50 a month from $1,650 to $1,700. There was also an increase in dental and vision from $135 to $184.25. The life insurance was increased from $10,000 to $50,000 in basic life insurance coverage. There was binding arbitration provision for discipline and litigation, along with the residency requirement that required new hires hired after January 1st, 2023, reside within 100 miles of the city of El Segundo. The estimated cost of the city's original LBFO was approximately $3.5 million. Utilizing data in effect September 2022, and also noting excluding the city's retiree medical benefit, with the city's LBFO, this placed El Segundo near the top of surveyed agencies. The retiree medical benefit the city of El Segundo provides is the same allowance to actives as it does to retirees. So currently, without the city's offer, that amount is $1,650 per month. So this is the survey data without the retiree medical benefit for police officer, and that's data as effect September 18, 2022. And this is the data for sergeant, the total compensation. The total monthly compensation includes items such as longevity pay, education pay, post pay, bilingual pay. It also takes into effect the CalPERS contributions. So you have one column with the monthly base salary, and then you have the other column plus and minus the benefits and the CalPERS. So after the city issued their original LBFO, the POA responded. The city issued an amended LBFO. This provision did not include the binding arbitration. It was still the same term, 4.5 years, a total of 5.25 in salary increases. Those were also spread over 4 increments. So you had 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, and then 0.75. The increases to the health, dental, and vision remain the same. The increase to the life insurance also remain the same, as well as the residency requirement. This is the counter that the city received from the POA most recently on January 5th. This is their 6th proposal. It was a 2.5-year term, October 1st, 2021, which covers the expired period of the MOU through June 30th, 2024, a $3,000 retention bonus, 6% retro to July 1, 3% July 1st, 2023, and it's the same contributions that were offered are in alignment here with their proposal, the health, dental, and vision, the life insurance, along with the residency. As I mentioned, the prior MOU was October 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2021. That prior MOU covered 3 fiscal years, so now I'm going to go over data that items that were included in that prior MOU that the POA employees received. So they had a 9% cost of living. There was a $37.50 retention bonus, increases to health insurance. During this time, in addition to the COLAs and other provisions, eligible employees continued to receive their 5% salary step increases based on merit, based on performance. Those were not suspended, those continued. There was an additional provision for employees who were at step E of the salary range that they be moved to step F. So some employees were eligible for an additional 10% salary increase. So that was the first fiscal year of the contract. The next fiscal year had a 2% COLA, 75 for health insurance, Again, employees were eligible to receive their merit increases based on performance. And then we had 2 additional employees who went from step E to step F, which is a 10% differential. And then the final fiscal year included a 2% COLA, 75 for health insurance, retention bonus for, you see 30 employees there. We had 5% step increases for 15 employees, and 9 employees received the 10%. Chief Bermudez will now present the information on police department staffing and expenditures.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to discuss briefly police department staffing. We're currently at 59 sworn officers, and sworn is everybody in uniform that is a peace officer. We're authorized 62, however, we're now at 59. And out of those 59, we have 3 in the academy. We have 2 on field training, which means they're not eligible to ride by themselves. They have to ride with a field training officer. And then we have 3 officers that are out on injured duty, IOD. We also have 7 officers that are, 7 recruits that are processing either as laterals or entry level. And that could mean some of them are scheduled to go to the academy, or some of them are laterals from other departments. So although we're not at our 62 capacity, 59 is a pretty good number relative to other departments and where we are on staffing. As far as the expenditures, so I'd like to go over some of the things that the city has invested money into the police department operations. In 2020, there was over $455,000 in purchases, everything from the firearms range remodel, which was our most expensive purchase that year, and that's our officers have to qualify every month with their firearm, and we have that in the basement of the police station. It hadn't been refurbished in several decades, and it needed it, but nonetheless, it was an expensive project. In 2021, there was a little bit over $22,000 in expenses. And in 2022, we'd have our most significant, which is we're due for new police cars, and that's been delayed several times by the manufacturer. However, that was over $690,000, and we're hoping to get those cars by February. And also, we updated all of the taser devices for all of the officers, and that was over $180,000. Expenditures last year were just over $1 million for the police department. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Mayor, if I might just add, there were, in some of the literature that was circulated around the city, there were statements made that the city was seeking to take away the officers' rights to sue the city and deprive them of their civil liberties, if you will. And just wanted to explain that the city made 2 different proposals, one of which included a binding arbitration provision. And what that means is that if one of the officers had decided he wanted to sue the city, generally that would be an employment-related lawsuit, that it would be subject to binding arbitration, meaning that a private individual, generally it's a retired judge, would hear the dispute and would make a decision as to the officer's lawsuit. So the person would have the right to pursue a lawsuit. It would just be heard by a private judge as opposed to a judge in a typical public courtroom or a jury in a typical public courtroom setting. So that was one of the offers that was made by the council. And it is worth noting that the cost of the arbitrator was going to be picked up by the city, and that cost ranges from $600 to $900 an hour in today's dollars. The city also included a proposal which did not include binding arbitration, and that would just allow employees to utilize the court system as they have a right to today. So I just wanted to explain that.
Thank you. So the last and best final offer that we had was, I think, 3.5 million roughly in increases. Just quick back of the envelope math, that's almost 5% of our general fund budget, just those increases alone. So that's interesting. The lifetime medical, I didn't see that up there. Did we talk about that? Did I miss that? How we're different from other cities with regards to lifetime medical?
The city of El Segundo provides a retiree medical benefit the same amount to actives as it does to retirees. And that currently is $1,650 for the POA. So if the proposal that the city made was to increase it to $1,700 per month and then another increase to $1,750. So that $1,700 a month is something that someone who retires from CalPERS with 5 years of service and retires from the city of El Segundo would be eligible to receive.
Thank you.
Actually, can you go back? I think it was slide 12, Chief, if you give one quick second. I think it's so right on the top there, I know there's always been a lot of discussion on that 2009 year where we had 72 officers. Do you recall, again, none of us were up here at that point in time, why we went to that level for that? And how long did we stay at that level of 72 officers? Sorry, I think I recall it was like I think we were expecting a lot of retirement, so we kind of overhired into the department, and then it kind of worked its way out.
I don't remember exactly what the reason was. I know we were at 72 for a long time.
For a long time?
Yeah.
Up through 2009 or after 2009?
Up to 2009.
Up to 2009,
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And then 2009 is when the recession hit?
Recession hit, right. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, this is just a receive and file, so we're good. Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Mark. All right, we're on to item 9. This is the Urho Saari Swim Stadium, otherwise known as the Plunge project. And Allie Stevens is up to report, right? Thank you.
Yeah, we're loading up. Let me just kick this item off also, Mayor. Actually, let me just put one on the table back there, please.
Sorry, Mrs. Mancini. I don't know what I was thinking.
They need to put one on the table out there. Okay, this item has been before you previously, and we are back at the council's direction at a previous meeting to, you asked us to come back and really take a hard look at the costs associated with this remodel. I know Elias and Ally and their teams and the consultant team went back, sharpened the pencil, if you will, and tonight we'll be presenting what they came up with or what we came up with for potential reductions in the capital budget associated with the remodel and the renovation of the Plunge. If I could just add, though, that while we'll go through these potential reductions this evening, the goal really, I think, is to still bid the entire project out. But there's a strategy that Elias and his people have come up with whereby we would isolate certain items to be bid separately so that at such time when we come back to the council with the entire awarding of a contract, at that time we can look, maybe bids will come in very favorable. There may be an opportunity to generate revenue outside of city funds that can be considered. So tonight's item, while it is looking at how we could potentially reduce costs associated with this project, our intent really is to bid out the entire project, as was shared previously. So I'll turn it over to Elias and then Ally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, as city manager alluded to, the idea is the direction of city council. We went back, we sharpened our pencils, and we talked to the architect, and we came up with some items that could potentially reduce the cost, although the staff is recommending that all these items be included. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to John V. Janani and Michael Wall with IBI that will go through this presentation.
Also, Mayor and Council, that it's really two parts to this presentation. One will be the capital side, which you'll hear about the potential reductions, but we'll also be discussing the kind of the business plan or the operation and maintenance side of the facility.
Hello, Council. So primarily what we've done was try to reduce the program as much as possible while maintaining anything that's required by code and accessibility, as well as the program required for the upgrades to the pool itself. So first step is we have proposed a more open lobby space that would be removed, remain as is, as current. The only difference would be the addition of the wheelchair lifts, which you can see in the back. That has to be that's part of the required upgrades. In the senior pool area, there was a proposed installed bleacher seating area. Instead, that would now be an open space where movable tables and chairs would be added for seating of the users. And finally, there was an upper terraced area for events and additional seating and tables. Instead, it would still be the existing bleacher spaces. However, they would be updated and maintained to repair any existing damages. Here's a cost breakdown showing the different programs we've removed: the terrace, the bleachers, and lobby space. In addition, we've looked at alternatives that we can pull out, such as removing the air conditioning to reduce cost, removing the addition of exterior painting, as well as we modified the design contingencies and percentages for the project, which also reduced the overall project cost. On the side is just a summary of each object and the reduction.
So overall, we've reduced the cost by $2 million. The strategy was to must-dos that absolutely we have to do for this project to open it up again versus the aesthetics or, you know, some of the things which would be nice to have. We've isolated them out, and as Elias explained, the strategy is we could still potentially put it part of the bid package and then see where the numbers come in when we bid it out, and let the council decide whether those alternates are included as part of the complete project or how we do further. So
I have a question. How much did it cost us to do this refresh? And then how much time have we now lost as a result of, because I look at this and someone could have sat out with his pencil and done this, like, don't paint the outside. Like, I find some of this stuff very, very basic. When we asked to go back and look and tighten or sharpen the pencil, it was really to look at the design, the structure of it. I'm just struggling because I find this really basic. And of course we would, if we're gonna put $13 million into a plunge, of course we're going to want the lobby redone. You know what I mean? Like, or of course we're gonna have to paint the outside. So basically the only thing here is this contingency thing for $1.2 million. I just find I'm getting very frustrated, and this is why I've been very, very clear that I want this project managed separately, is that we're wasting time and we're wasting money, and we're, once again, just gonna go, like, this plunge has been closed through the whole pandemic. It's still closed. Myself and my children helped at the senior luncheon for the Christmas Eve dinner. And the one complaint that my girls kept hearing from all the seniors was, please open back up the Plunge. Please open the Plunge. And I feel like we're just wasting time and wasting money, and we just need to move forward with the design, find the money, and find a management team to really get this project running and up and running. And this type of, I just feel, I'm not sure how much it's cost you. I haven't given you time to give me the answer, but if this cost us another $50,000 to come up with this, and it's been now, when was the last time we talked about this? October? Was it October? November.
We are in November. And
So we're just, time is wasted, money's being wasted, let's move on. So that's what I'm gonna say. I'm not targeting anybody, it's my frustration.
So, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The bulk of the cost of this project simply has to do with plumbing, with pumps, with filters.
Well, I understand, and that's the thing, what's frustrating me, we've just spent a year on the heating and talking about the heating of the aquatic center and how we did the wrong heating, and not once in any of these designs have we talked about the size of the heaters, or to make sure that if we should be doing different types of, we haven't talked about that at all. Like, we're talking about a lobby space. Well, I feel like we're focused on the wrong components, and that's why, later in the agenda, I want to bring up about the funding from the Arts and Culture Fund. Like, we can find some of the money, for, like, to put the arts money into the lobby to make it beautiful, but I don't know, the fact that we put $100,000 for the exterior paint, if you drive, it's quite interesting, the school district is doing a lot of remodeling lately. We all know that. And they've got a project manager that's moving and shaking. And they are redoing that Richmond Street School. And if you walk down the street at the back off of that's Palm, and you look over and you see the Plunge compared to all the school district, it's like this eyesore because it hasn't been touched and it's just sitting. It's been sitting now there for how many years? So I'm just my frustration, and I apologize if I'm not articulating well, but I, for one, want to move forward. We have a plan that the Parks and Recs Commission vetted, liked, and now, let's move on.
I'd like to prepare everyone for me to pile on. I find this somewhat unimaginative as well for a $12 million project where $4 million of it were estimated demolition and disposal. And none of those costs were explored or articulated. It's just a broad estimate. And if a third of our project, you could say this, my training and experience says it's going to cost $4 million for this building, but if we're talking about $7,006 for the demo of a wall, I think it bore a little bit of an explanation to the residents about why it cost $2 million to remove the building and why it cost $2 million to take that stuff to the middle of the desert. Those are things that are worth exploring because that is a far bigger chunk of this building than the $7,006 demolition of the wall. So I think those are the sort of costs, and if there were big engineering items and big ticket items that could be amended or adjusted, whether it's the size and speed of a pump or the size of a heater or a particular plumbing application or something that we'd explore, but these I feel as though significantly missed the mark of what we were looking for when we say sharpen the pencil, because this is, line iteming a few things off as opposed to, a bigger ticket item. Okay, what were all alternatives for demolition? What are all alternatives for disposal? Is it this much to dispose of because there's this much asbestos or lead paint or, chromium hexafluoride, whatever the heck's in there, those are things that we would be more receptive to understand because we would understand why that drives the cost so high. Otherwise, we just have a blob of $4 million of demolition and disposal costs that eats a huge chunk of this that is entirely unaddressed in the building.
So just for clarification, I guess I'm trying to understand where you're seeing the 4 million, because I understand there was like a $2 million, but that included all kinds of contingency in it, especially, and we did hire a third-party estimator, so it's not done in-house. Just for clarification, a consultant who actually works in the industry to give us more factual numbers, so that we're not, but the current market that we are in is in a high market, and if you look at like 1.2 million, which is in general overhead, and we're seeing that across the board. It's not just the Plunge. I'm talking about projects that we've just finished as well, which have the market's stabilizing now again with the supply market, but it's still not there yet, and we have to be fair to the city by giving you what's the current market. We wouldn't want to.
No, these things are explicable. These were not in any report we received.
Right, okay.
Or any briefing. We just had a flat fee.
So, Mayor Pro Tem, to elaborate, this facility was built, I believe, shortly after World War II. There are a lot of asbestos. We looked at it very closely. We went back to look at those costs. Now, if you would like to, we could bring you the detailed costs, but the fact is, some structure like this, it's going to take this amount of money to get it renovated, and we checked all the numbers. We are not making that up, and as she indicated, I made sure this is also reviewed by a third party.
And that's great. That's the sort of thing that we would have probably liked to say. I'm glad you have that information now. But those are the sorts of things that when we want to explain to people, here's why the Plunge is so expensive. Well, we designed it for this, but also it is 30% more expensive because of blank. And if we're just saying, well, disposal, we're filming The Sopranos, and the money, it's just disappearing.
And one more thing I would like to add. We followed the direction of the city council. Before I got here, the previous consulting firm was hired to do a survey of the residents. And we did that. So every aspect of this design was based on input, and that was the direction of the city council. So it's not that we really are elaborating on the design. This is the need of the community. This is based on the input we received. We have all of that documented. And so at the direction of the city council, we wanted to go back and see what we could shave. So we are back. So believe me, I'm doing everything possible to speed up this process.
Can I ask, when you went back and did this cost-cutting exercise, if you asked stakeholders to prioritize, or was it just a consultant staff that did it?
Well, we just asked the consulting firm. I do not believe we went back to the stakeholders. We just communicated that with this.
But if you consider, let me clarify.
Yeah,
if you consider Parks and Rec as a stakeholder, the aquatics team, we've reviewed it with the aquatics team.
Yeah, we
What's
definitely.
the aquatics team?
Yeah, the aquatic team, it's the subcommittee of the Rec and Park Commission. There are 2 members. They're here. Well, I don't see Kelly Watson. Miss Kelly Watson is not here.
Well, I'll disclose I had a conversation with Ms. Watson.
Yeah, and she
who
sent a letter to
bring
the
me up
city
to
council.
speed, and it was basically what she put in her letter, which is part of public comment.
Right, exactly.
Let me just say this. Having, I'm in construction litigation. I used to work for school districts doing large projects. I've been on the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee for 5 years watching these programs roll out. If you're being told today it's $12 million, it'll be $15, $16 million by the time we go to build. I think that if you've already gone through this process and you've gotten the input from your Parks and Rec Committee and you've done community surveys and we're being told this is the facility we need, then that's the facility we should be building. I think trying to build something and not paint it seems insane to me. I like the idea of bidding them in the alternate, but at the end of the day, just think of the problems we're having with the other aquatic center, where there's no shade, the bleachers have you staring at the sun, the heaters are undersized. I don't think this is the point in this process for us to start cutting corners. I think the reality is if this is a community need that we want to meet, then we're going to have to find a way to make it work at the conceptual design as it was presented to us. So I would not be in favor of recommending any of these cuts, because as I believe this has gone through a process with our subcommittees, this has had some citizen input, and this is what the community wants. And I am not comfortable with spending this much money on not painting a building. I just think that's insane. So I would give direction to move forward with the process. If you want to bid these in the alternative so that we get a complete bid, and then later we can decide as the numbers come in, fine, but is this part of the later agendized item of hiring a construction manager to run the Parks and Rec upgrade? Would that include the Plunge, or is that something we have to discuss separately?
That would be separate.
Separate, yeah.
Okay, well, obviously, I think once you're talking dollar values this much, the extra cost for having someone experienced in landing public works is without a doubt worth the money. It comes from the bid process, it comes from reviewing it all the way through project closeout so that you don't get a delay claim at the end of the day for extras and change orders and everything else. It's a big project, it's gonna cost a lot of money, but the price is gonna be what it is.
One more thing I'd like to add, before the project get advertised, we're gonna have an independent review by another architect team. We call it value engineering, which is normally done in the industry. So they go through this whole design with a fresh pairs of eye and make sure if there's any place where we conceivably could improve or get some efficiency. And the way we plan to do is as was indicated, these items could be added as an alternate bid. So after the advertisement, we bring it to the city council, and this council has another say-so about that.
Okay,
So
hold on, I'm sorry, Carol. A couple things. Number one, the stakeholders that we keep talking about that voted for this, did they know it was gonna cost $15 million? I'm quite sure that if you give someone an option of having a pool and not having a pool, the answer is going to be, I want a pool. If you say it's going to cost $15 million, they might need that information. So that being said, we're going to build a pool. I get it. I've been going against this and talking about this for a long time, and I know we're going to get it. Our fundamental problem is that we didn't give you a budget. You have an unlimited budget, so you built what you built. We don't have the money to build that. That has been the fundamental problem since day one. The second fundamental problem we have is that we have no idea how to run it. We're not pool experts. It's unfair for us to put this burden on our current city staff who doesn't have a background in this. So that's another part that I'm gonna talk about later. To move the project forward though, I completely get what you're saying. I think the way we need to do this is say, we're gonna spend X amount of money from the general fund on this. Let's just say it's $10 million. Anything that comes above that, design whatever the heck you want, it has to come from an independent resource. It has to come from fundraising. So we know 10 million exactly, that's all that's gonna come out of our fund. The delta needs to be raised. Because in the end, we're the ones who have to pay for this pool until it goes to college and gets married. And that's gonna cost a hell of a lot more than the cost of the build. So if we wanna move forward, and I know we do, because it's been closed for almost 3 years now, right? So there's a whole generation of kids coming through here that don't even know what the hell the Plunge is. So I get that, but we have to stop worrying about sunken costs and stop throwing good money after bad on a bad idea. So if you get to the 10 million, that's what we're gonna build. You're gonna achieve the delta through somewhere else, hire a project manager. God, if we can get that person from the school district, they're amazing, okay? I think they are literally under budget and ahead of schedule on everything. That should almost be the benchmark that we go to right now. We are doing everything the opposite. We are saying, build whatever you want, and now let's cut out paint and an HVAC system and everything like that. It's backwards. So I think this is a good chance for us to start going forward on capital improvement projects and saying we need experts who know how to do this. It's unfair for us to put this on you. To be honest, Linnea, it's unfair that we put this on you. But we do, and I appreciate it. So that's the first part. And as we start getting into the O&M part, I'll talk more, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as an idea to move this forward.
I just wanted to mention, you said something about bringing in a third group to look at this. I mean, I just want to make sure we don't we've already done, this is the second company that's already looked at it.
Right.
I don't want to, I understand if we want to bring someone in to look at the costing, but I don't need another third engineering company in to look at the design.
No, I understand.
You know, we've already done this.
I understand.
Okay, now the other thing is, you know, the one part of the design that you guys had brought to us is the conference room on that on that platform, we don't need a conference room up there. And that was clear from the Aquatic Center, that they said that the Aquatics Committee, we don't need a conference center up there, so let's not do the conference. There's a couple things that we had thought you would eliminate, but we got elimination of paint. So I just want to make sure that that's where I think we were hoping to streamline some of.
So I think where the idea we went, I don't want to put a building out there without a fresh coat of paint. It just seems like some of you said, it just seems silly not to do that. Like, paint is something that the community sees, you know, those are the things that we want to put our money where people can see where the money is going and what we've done. But part of the reason we did this is that you can come back and paint later, but this is how we had to give you what absolutely needs to get done to open this facility from a code point of view, from life safety and all of those issues which we need to address because it is such an old building and having to seismically upgrade. So that's the only reason we've kind of, said $100,000, maybe, you can come back and paint later. That was the only idea we've separated that. The intention is not, like, it's such a small amount in the $11 million the project's going to cost us.
Elias, I'm just wondering, how many firms do you figure can we go out to bid for, and do we have the ability to implement a not to exceed?
I'm not sure if we could put anything we want to, but my experience is you do not put not to exceed, because that may send a wrong message and it may come back with the results that you wouldn't have.
I might beg to differ a little bit. I just did a large commercial project, went out to 5 bidders, did a not to exceed, and stuck outside of a couple change orders that I implemented and signed off with the right process. That project right here on Eucalyptus was on time and on budget. So I would highly encourage us to solicit bids with a not to exceed. So we either set a number, to Councilmember Drew's point, in advance, or we get those bids in advance, and then contractually we have a not to exceed contingent upon change orders that we agree to. But
in the public works arena, though, where you have to put these things out for public bid, and then you're mandated to take the lowest bidder, a not to succeed kind of takes away that whole process. What they're proposing is, look, we can chop it up. The painting will be separate. All these things will be alternates. So we're going to bid out the entire project, and then we can award a portion of it. If we just have to do the bones and the plumbing, we can start with that and then figure out how we pay for the rest of it as it moves forward.
Hold on, though. Why can we not implement a fixed fee stated another way in this contract? I get public works and going with the lowest qualified bidder.
You could, I suppose, make it clear to all the bidders that if the total bid exceeds X dollars, you're not going, the intent is not to award a contract. I mean, you could make that clear.
I'm looking at it 2 ways. One is we're setting some parameters on what we expect the bids to come in at, but the other is once we get a bid back, that we contractually tie them up outside of change orders. And I don't know if we typically do that because I've never been involved in this process when you're building a public facility. I just know from my experience, I have done that, and it's worked incredibly well.
So
the way the process does work the public contracting code is that unless there is a change order, which is either brought voluntarily by the contracting authority, the city, in this case, asking for something different than what was contracted for, or there's some unforeseen condition that the contractor would not have, through reasonable diligence have known about, which causes the cost to increase, then the cost is what the bid is. I mean,
so there's no time and materials contracts. These are fixed contracts?
Yes.
Great. I think we have consensus for this part to move forward and bid the whole thing, and then if we have to value engineer, which is a pretty typical process later, once we understand the bids, then we have an ability to do that, right? That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great.
Can we, and I don't know if we have to agendize this later, but there is an advantage to having construction management oversee the bid process, vet the contractors, because surprise, surprise, there are some not so honest contractors out there. And they can pre-qualify these individuals, get references, so we know the people who are bidding have the bonding capacity, have the fundamentals to actually deliver.
Right.
As if we just send it out and then we go to a construction manager,
Yeah.
you know, we're losing that expertise.
Yeah, to Councilman Baldino's
Yeah,
point,
once-
what is the process that you use?
Yes, once this project is completed and the design is accepted by the city council, we'll come to city council and request for advertisement. Once we do advertise and we receive the bids, at that point, the city staff is going to also hire a construction management firm. And most likely we put out another RFP to hire.
I think he said opposite.
You want to pre-qualify the bidders,
Right.
where they have to come and do a site inspection, they have to tour, you
Yeah,
give them
that-
all these parameters.
yeah,
So the
that's-
construction manager becomes before it's advertised and bid.
Yeah,
They're part of that
that's-
process of bringing it to the
And-
street.
And one of the
Yeah.
things, we had talked about this, I mean, I brought it up many times, we need to bring a manager, someone to manage this project. And we need to get that person on sooner, like before this whole process starts. And that's managing that process.
It's the same construction
Yeah,
manager.
yeah.
You would see it
When-
from before it goes out,
yeah,
pre-qual, all the way through project
From beginning,
closeout.
like now, until, we need to move forward on that. And I'm not sure, you said we need to go for the final design. Haven't we approved that final design? Like, what?
No, we are not,
We're still.
Yeah, the final design
This is
will
what
be
I
done.
think what's-
So to clarify, we've gone back and forth with, changes in design. We had a different firm do it. We came in, we took what was given to us, we implemented and made sure everything works, and then we came to you, and then the budget was, we gave you a budget that was to current market value, and we had to come back. So if you give us the blessing today to move forward, we can move forward and translate these into construction documents that will go out to become a bid package. And whether the city chooses to have, a separate RFP to go hire a construction manager, like Mr. Ryan said, it would be helpful to have them early on because we get the benefit of them looking at it simultaneously rather than later on, which is not your value. As an architect, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
at
if
this
we're-
point we need that project manager.
Right, and if we're foregoing any of these $2 million cuts and just bidding and going with the design is final.
Okay,
So
the
we-
only thing is that conference room, which,
Right.
Which is not,
It's not, right.
which is not.
yeah,
Right.
just don't put the walls up.
Yeah.
What's the architect's role? Would you be engaged as well,
So,
or no?
As of
Through
now,
construction, I'm
as
saying.
of now, our contract is up to design, and then we've been contracted to finish getting up agency approval with the understanding that when the project moves forward into construction, we would be still administrating the construction because typically we like to do that just because.
Yeah, because typically you're
Yeah,
kind of
but
an
it-
arbiter as well with the
Yeah.
contractor and the
Because
owner.
we become the owner's rep in that
Yeah,
case in
okay.
this
Yeah.
process.
So let me
because-
clarify, they will not be doing day-to-day inspection.
Right.
They will be doing, at the high level,
They would also be the ones that say, this is a change order, this is not.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yes.
So
But-
we would be reviewing, in that capacity, we would be reviewing the submittals,
Right.
answering any RFIs, as the project moves forward, making sure it's getting built per contract documents, per agency review. So that is our role in that case. It's just that contractually, we've not been hired with just an understanding with the city right now that when the project moves forward, we would have a separate contract for it.
The project manager will be doing the day-to-day stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, the project
I
management.
think at this juncture, that project manager needs to be ASAP.
Yes, we will
That's the first
pursue
thing that needs
that
to be, and then
Yeah.
we need to
immediately.
move forward, and then just,
Yep, we'll pursue
There are
that
a couple of
immediately.
more slides, by the way, that talks about the schedule. There you go.
Hold on, you already have, there's 300 grand in here, so that is earmarked for construction management, so that would be the construction manager Councilmember Baldino is talking about, correct? Or is that been-
There is a line item, 300,000.
That's been reduced by 50,000, it looks like,
Yeah.
but still $250,000 for construction management.
Yeah, it is reduced if we were to make the cuts. If we plan to do the whole project, then it'll be back to 300,000.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that we already have it allocated.
Yes.
We've already got money set aside for that, okay, great.
so I'm just looking at this timeline, which is the next slide. You're telling me we're still a year out before the final bid goes out? Like, it's gonna take us a year when I'm just very frustrated with this timeline. We've already done the design, we've had 2 people look at it, and now it's gonna take a year Is that what it says? December?
Well, this gives them 3 months from today to design development and then additional time for construction develop plans? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So
This is just
it
a
gives-
conceptual design. This is not the actual.
No, this is a
No,
timeline.
Yeah.
exactly, this is a timeline, and
You've got to get the construction documents.
Well,
Yeah, working drawings.
construction documents includes agency approval,
Yeah.
all of, going to the building department, all of that. And it is a generous schedule, we're not, honestly, that's not our plan. Our plan is to move as fast as we can and get it out, but we wanted to make sure there's enough time to come back to the board if there is any. This is the worst case scenario, is the end of the year, that like, this is the worst case scenario.
If we're in December and just getting the final plans, I think I'm gonna stand up here and scream.
The funding for this project, though, if you look at the staff report, we explain the currently how much there is in the pot and what is being planned for the next, the next CIP projects. So even by December, we won't have all the money we need in the pot, because if you look at your staff report, it covers that. I just want to make you aware of it.
You're not gonna spend all $12 million from the day you start the construction.
Well, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but when the city, any project that is bid and is awarded, we have to have all the funds in the account. We cannot,
You're going to have to.
That's right.
You're gonna, well, the city has money in different
have
accounts, and
reserves,
you have
right.
reserves, whatnot.
And we
Once
just
you
had
sign the
business-
agreement, you have to complete the contract unless you're willing to stop it and pay,
did we not-
pay damages to the contractor, so I assume you're not gonna do that. Once you award the agreement, then yes, you need to complete it.
Yeah, I mean, we have the money coming in from the Topgolf. We have the Parks and Recs fee that we assessed, the money's starting to come in from that. We have the Arts and Culture Fund. We have the new business license tax fund that will start kicking in in a year.
We can get.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really, it's hard for me to go back to the public and say, oh, we're not gonna have our docks ready to start going out to bid until December 2023, when the school district's able to pull up a gym from ground zero in less than in a year and a half.
Well, they put a lot of
Yeah.
legwork into that whole bond process,
Right.
as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
but I'm just,
yeah, I think with the sources that you mentioned, probably most likely there won't be any issue. But right now, I'm just letting you know, the money that there is in the pot is what you see on the staff report.
we understand.
So that's why you have these alternates where you kind of chop it up. And then when you get it back, you can say,
Yeah.
we're just doing step A right now. We have that money. And now we know construction's going to take 2 years. We've got to raise $1 million to paint it. And you can do a separate contract, or you can rebid that. But it's better to send it all out because there's value in doing everything at once. Doing it piecemeal is just going to cost us more and take more time. But he's right. You can't sign a contract and not have that money in the bank. It's just not how it works. And then you got to have a contingency above that, 7 to 10%.
So 6.
I mean, it's like if you remodeled your house, they're gonna find something they didn't know, and there's gonna be a change order.
One thing that the staff could do is we could start putting our thoughts together for a fundraising campaign, such as providing placards that could be installed in the building or by the building, and there are people that would give a lot of money to have their name on these placards. So if the city council desires and directs the staff, and Ali has a lot of good experience along those lines, we could test the ground and see what we can do, if that's the pleasure of the city council.
So Elias, yes, I agree. There's opportunity for us to go out, and I'm sure, Richard Lindquist has
Yes.
been always very, he wants this plunge done,
Right.
and he's already stated that he will help in some capacity and help us fundraise. That, we need to, that should be second, like, we need to do that in parallel.
Of course, of
And
course.
that, we can handle through Barbara or Ally's
Yes.
department. The construction, I don't need you to worry about the fundraising component.
Yeah.
That's our job to do that.
All right.
And I just need this project to move forward,
Yeah.
and all these stops and starts need to
Yeah.
go away, and that we have a project manager on queue, ready to go, and
Sure.
You know, and I think there's been such a significant amount of time spent on the conceptual design that I don't think, and I'm not an engineer in life, but the design development phase can maybe be shortened a bit, and then construction, 6 months for construction documents, I think that can be sped up also.
Yeah, we'll shorten that span. Again, these documents have to be approved by the building and safety, because the fact that this is considered a historical building that
then
are.
aren't those our own employees?
Right.
Okay, so if, you know, we can.
Sure.
We can expedite that.
Of course,
within our own
of
departments.
course.
I mean, we're not going to a different agency.
I
We don't have to
ass-
go to another agency. This is our own people.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Believe me, I'm gonna do my best to get this project delivered.
What's next? The business plan side of it? I think we're done on this part.
So, yeah. Do you wanna get up there?
If you'd like to hear that.
So,
Elias, you're doing an amazing job.
I'm given
Hi,
enough
we know your
direction
time.
on moving
Thank you.
forward with the alternates as proposed.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
They can't wait to work for us, I can tell. They're cracking at the bit, come back with the first RFI and change order. It's gonna be fun.
All right, on that note, good evening, Mayor Boyles and members of the City Council. The next few slides will provide an overview of a detailed business plan for the Plunge that was requested by the City Council and drafted by our former Recreation Supervisor of Aquatics, Linnea Palmer. Okay, so Linnea has been promoted to a management analyst position in the Recreation, Parks, and Library Department, well-deserved. So her role will be changing, but don't worry, I have her right next door to me, and we will make sure she stays involved with this project. Put my glasses back on, excuse me. The business plan document, which I believe all of you have a copy of, contains an overview of the swim stadium, an overview of proposed programming, the planned operational hours, projected revenue, a look at the proposed staffing model, and a summary of proposed expenses. For those watching this on TV that may not be familiar with the Plunge, the facility is a historic indoor pool located in downtown El Segundo that has served the community for many, many years. The large pool contains 8 25-yard lanes, a diving board, and ranges from 4 feet to 12 feet in depth. The smaller pool or splash pool is 2 to 3.5 feet deep and is used primarily for swim classes for very young children. The facility will receive many upgrades through the proposed design changes, but the 2 pools will remain the same. On this slide and in your packet, you can see the numerous aquatics programs that are being proposed for the Plunge. The table also differentiates between contracted programming and city staff-led programming. And finally, the table notes which programs listed have the potential to generate revenue and which do not. This slide contains a look at the proposed schedule of the Plunge, including a breakdown of weekday and weekend hours and uses. And as you can see, there is scheduled time for maintenance. On this slide, staff has estimated potential revenue projections based on use. You can see that the uses are differentiated into several categories. The lower portion of the slide includes a look at potential revenue from a possible upper terrace deck should the council decide to include that in the final design. The proposed staffing levels for the Plunge are listed here and include full and part-time staff that will be needed to maintain and operate the facility. The total estimated cost for staffing is just under $945,000. Here we provided a look at the historical costs of part-time staffing at the Plunge from 2017 through 2019. Just quick, important to note that the Aquatic Center opened during the 2019. The final slide provides an overview of proposed annual costs and expenses for the swim stadium. The facility is estimated to cost $1.2 million to operate and is expected to generate just over $440,000. That concludes my portion of the presentation. I do have Linnea Palmer here, and she or I can answer any questions you have specific about the plan. Come on up.
All right, Ally, stand up there.
Okay.
Got your bullseye on? No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding with you. Actually, it's a very good report. Thank you for going through this. I know one of the things we asked for at the beginning was we have to start looking at doing a business plan. Even if the business plan is to lose $500,000, there's still a business plan involved.
Right.
Okay, so I appreciate it. So one thing I'd like to go back to at the beginning here is it's your proposed staffing needs. And you have two coordinators up there. We're about to have roughly $25 to $30 million worth of pools in this town. We need a manager, not just a director. You need someone who can run the pools, run aquatics. If we're going to make this investment in facility, we have to make this investment in management and personnel. Just my thought process on that. In the end, Councilmember Baldino, we're a lot, Pimentel, we know pretty much every pool from San Diego all the way up north due to water polo, et cetera. I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of them are owned by school districts. We're going to have now two major pools that we run. Miracosta, Redondo Beach, Hawthorne, Torrance Aquatic Center, all the way down to Irvine, San Juan Capistrano. I can just name them all because I have to go to them all the time. They're all on school campuses and not on city. Okay, so with that in mind, we have to look at, I believe, as we build two pools, we have to look at how we operate the two of them. And I know this is a huge discussion. I was at that podium during the first time it happened when we had ESAC open up, is that if we know we're going to take a large subsidy from the plunge, and we know that any kind of plunge or indoor pool, community pool, you're lucky if you get 25% cost recovery. We understand that. If that's the case, and we're going to be able to live with that, we have got to completely pivot on ESAC. And what I mean by that is, and I know, Lee, you're going to look at me at the side of your eyes because this is what you were saying, but I learned. You have to take we have to understand how to, if not break even on ESAC, have a plan to possibly break even on ESAC. Because we can absorb all this, but we can't absorb double of this. If all of a sudden we're taking a $500,000 loss at ESAC and 750 here, $1.2 million in subsidy for aquatics is way above and beyond, I think, what anybody would have expected. So in order to combat that, we got to start looking at how we really operate over there. The El Segundo Aquatic Center pool, we don't own that pool. We have to manage that pool, okay? This pool here, the Plunge, that is the community's pool, right? So whatever we can do there, but over there, that's a competition pool. I think we have to look at how we deal with nonprofit groups, all right? The 501c3 piece. I'm all for 501c3s, don't get me wrong, but if we're going to build a new facility over here, we might have to start moving some of those groups here or figure out how that works and look at what we can get on the other side to get a better cost recovery. To look at how an individual that might be able to manage this, that knows how to get to, and I know you already did it through USA Water Polo and USA Swimming, getting events here. My God, we had the Junior Olympics here 2 years ago. There's all kinds of opportunities there for someone who's able to dedicate that time and knowledge to be able to do that and be able to better monetize that pool. So, look, I'm to the point now, I understand we're going to build the pool. I'm with you, but I think we have to pivot on how we treat these two pools and kind of take the handcuffs off you a little bit on how you program over on the other side of PCH versus how we program here. So that's kind of my whole little thing on that. I've gone from like, hey, we're not going to have a plunge. I'm like, okay, we're going to have a plunge, but in order to afford to manage this and pay for it over subsequent years, we have to have a better business plan on the other side.
Yeah, and
That's my spiel.
I appreciate your point to Councilmember Giroux about the staffing and the level of supervision that you need for these two facilities. I think it's a big ask for a supervisor level position. I would agree with that. I think it would be more appropriate to have a manager or superintendent level position if we're going to ask them to run two facilities worth $20 million in the community. I would agree with that.
No, I'm just going to say I agree with Lance. I didn't know it'd be the first time we sat there I'd say that. But yeah, I actually agree. It's this is the community pool. And when I look at your proposed operation hours, you've got just people paying the entire time, whereas we're gonna have, you know, this is the drop-in place, this is where our high school kids are gonna go to have their practices, and then the other professional pool would be more of the one we need to monetize. So I agree with what he's saying, and just, I just take with a grain of salt anytime I get a business plan telling me how much money the city is gonna make running a pool, just from what we went through with the last time we were told that before we built the other pool. You know, and some of your, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
And just think, Ally, you have 2 years to figure that plan out, because it's gonna take 2 years for us to get that pool up.
Gotcha.
So hopefully in 2 years, we can have a real comprehensive, and I agree with Lance and Mr. Baldino, we need to, you know, when we look at the aquatics, the ESAC should be actually hopefully turning a profit that can offset some of the other costs. And I mean, we have the Olympics coming, there's so many opportunities, and we should be preparing for that and planning for it. And that's why we need the pool, the plunge, done before the Olympics come, so that we can not kick our students out, so we can hawk the ESAC and use that and make some revenue off of the Olympics. So, Mr. Elias, I'm gonna have high expectation that this plunge is gonna be done before the Olympics. Well, yeah, 2028. but please, okay?
And I'm gonna personally make a donation to this project.
I'll match it.
I saw we assessed no revenue to joint use with the school district. They participate indirectly in ESAC with their equipment costs. I would encourage us, as we do the joint use agreement with them, that we see what their level of use intended for the plunge will be, and then ask to see, I mean, it used to be theirs, right? The city bought it for $1 after Prop 13. I think it's reasonable, if they're gonna be heavy users, and a heavy use base, that we ask to see if there's a contribution that they can participate in, even if it's just the equipment.
Aren't they, yeah, they're paying $1 million already, right?
They're paying on the construction, but not on the O&M. At
You're
ESAC,
talking about the ongoing.
That's correct.
Right.
At ESAC, they contribute for the equipment.
Right.
Because they can't have a gift of public funds, I think it's worthwhile pursuing for the plunge as well.
Can we sell it back to them for 50 cents?
No objection.
That's a good point, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
No questions from the mayor, okay.
And by the way, thank you, team. I mean, a lot of work and effort, and I know we get frustrated, but you guys are doing an amazing job. I guess we want, you know, we're hearing from the residents, the plunge has been closed a long time. We need to make sure it gets open as soon as possible.
We're on that track.
Thank you, Elias.
Thanks.
Thank you, Lily.
Okay, item 7, public hearing, adoption of annual community development block grant program project selection for 2023-2024. This is time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing regarding the aforementioned. City clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, Mayor, proper notice was given.
Thank you. Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
No written communication has been received.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Mr. George, who will make the presentation?
Yes, Mayor, our Community Development Director, Michael Allen, will lead off this item.
Thank you, Mr. George. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight's presentation will be made, it'll be brief and made by our consultant, Tina Gall, who's a longtime honorary member of our staff who's been consulting for us on our use of CDBG allocation or the Community Development Block Grant allocation of funds. So with that, invite Ms. Gall up and to make a brief presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Tina Gall. I'm the Community Development Block Grant Consultant for the City of El Segundo. The item before you this evening is the annual request to approve the proposed Community Development Block Grant Program for 2023-2024. This year, we're proposing to use the allocation of approximately $140,000 to remove the obsolete and damaged asphalt pathway that's at the El Segundo Library Park and replace it with an American with Disabilities Act compliant new concrete pathway complete with hand railings and approximately 8 accessible curb ramps. And the proposed project is consistent with the city's intention to improve access and mobility for the city's elderly and disabled persons. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
So, I have a question.
Sure.
So is that just the pathway, or is it also the patio outside the children's library?
This would just be the pathway only.
Because to be honest with you, the patio outside the children's library is what's more challenging for someone with disabilities. Because if you're parking on Pine or Mariposa and you got to take the ramp down, that pathway, that patio is like slab rock.
Councilmember, let's close the public
sorry.
hearing and then we'll have council comments, okay? Any other questions for the consultant? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, thanks. Okay, council discussion.
So that, if any area, that to me would be the area that needs the most from it, because it's very uneven. And so that's why I want to understand that. And then the other component, what I wanted to ask was, back over a year ago, maybe now, we approved funds to do an art project, an activation. I think actually it was pre-COVID, maybe, so it's a couple years ago, where we had talked about doing an activation of that park and putting some art installation in that park along that pathway. So if we're gonna do this pathway, shouldn't we, I don't know where that project went, because I know we had put some money aside for it. I would like to do it in conjunction so that we're not digging something up or putting something in and then digging it up again. I just want to make sure that there's some synergy there, or if we're not moving forward with that project, let's make that. Because I think, do you remember that? It was it was an activation of the park pre-pandemic because the park wasn't underutilized. And then the pandemic happened and the park became utilized.
Right.
Sir,
So I just,
I'll go ahead and respond in two parts while you formulate a response to the second part. But the first part related to the scope. So we're only giving a finite amount of funds from the county or the feds channeled through the county through the CDBG program. And so the scope is very closely defined to utilize the funds in minimizing or limiting or preventing any use of any other outside funds. So it's fully funded by CDBG. And so this project was designed specifically to fit within the parameters of what the funding would cover. I think if the platform area is another priority area, then we can program that for a follow-up subsequent ADA improvement if that's what's needed. We didn't necessarily do an ADA assessment of the platform itself, but the funds are specifically required in this case to be utilized for ADA improvements only. So that's why it's limited to the pathway only at this time, but we can certainly do a follow-up project on the other components adjacent to the pathway as well.
to Mr. Baldino's point earlier, wouldn't it be easier or more cost-effective to do a comprehensive project and then have sub A, sub B, like, so that it's, and then we fund the piece about the patio area. Like if we're digging it up and we're putting this new concrete pathway in, yet we have this patio that's maybe 800 square feet, 700 square feet, that we could just do at the same time, it would make.
I think what I'm hearing is because of the funding source, the scope of the project's been approved. So we can approve this and then we can move forward and have someone else pay for improvements. And then, as you're saying, we can take a second go at some more grants and say, hey, let's make this ADA compliant. But to tinker with it now would be 2 steps forward and half a step. You know what I mean? So I think
Can I ask you a question? This is, we don't, I'm a visual person, so without seeing a map, so the winding asphalt paths that take us through Library Park will have a railing along it now?
Portions of it. There will be railing where the portions of the grade exceed or hit the gradient that requires a railing for someone who is either wheelchair bound or needs walking assistance to meet ADA requirements. So it won't be the entirety of the path.
Because there's a lot of users there that go back and forth across those paths real fast with balls and kites and things that obviously I don't have a chart, right? So I don't know where these are going, and I'm not circling don't put one here or do put one there. But our heavy users there are children, who are going to clothesline themselves and not be able to play soccer and all those things. So I have some reservation without seeing it about showing up there for a concert in the park and somebody hitting me with a sack of nickels and saying, what kind of idiot put a railing right here? I can't see my Selena concert.
Or if not all, the railing is where there's a grade differential. So I can't imagine there'd be places where soccer's being played with the grade differential.
I don't know how steep the grade, without.
Did you have a picture?
You have an idea?
Checking the staff report. There's slopes. Yeah, there's sloping grades to the walkway, and to a degree where you don't play sports that require.
Yeah, but kids are just running around there anyway.
Yeah,
That's
it's
just
chaos.
it's like open play.
It's,
I think the same could be said to, candidly, the same could be said to most playground equipment. Kids are running around, there's obstacles. But I think if we wanted to.
If you give us a rough idea, it might be easier for us to look at the thing and be like, that's fine, or.
I mean, if the railing is from Mariposa down, there's a steep grade going into that patio, which I was talking about. That I would understand, but anywhere along the meandering path.
I'm gonna dig up
maybe
the
re-slope it too,
graph.
so the grade isn't as much.
I hate to be that
Level it
guy.
down.
You know, the good idea fairy appearing at the end of the project, but,
While he's looking that up, if I could just speak to the library park activation project that Ms. Perstuck brought up. So there were some initial plans for that design. However, when we really started to look at it from the perspective of the concerts in the park, it became problematic. Some of those pieces would impact views, but also would be potentially areas where children would want to run around in the middle of people that are sitting and trying to watch, to view the concert. So we've had to take a relook at that. The costs were also much more significant than originally anticipated. So Elias and I have been having some conversations about revisiting that concept altogether. And so I would anticipate we would be bringing that back to you.
And one of the other component, while he's looking that up on the activation piece.
Sure.
Was there's the steps out of the library into the park.
Right.
So one of the things was, how do we open up the library to be comprehensive part of the park?
Right.
So if you check out a book, you can go sit on a blanket and read in the park. And I had challenged the team to look at a way to open those doors.
Right.
So people could take and use the park as part of the library. And one of the challenges was the security doors at the front. We don't have them at the back, but at this juncture, I mean.
Yeah, we're looking at
I
that.
don't understand, we don't charge fees on
Fines or,
fines,
right,
anything, so
right.
why do we care anymore?
Yeah,
Do you know?
I think we're looking at that. I think that's one of the concepts that's being considered is an outdoor space like you said, it's kind of that open concept of an outdoor space. So that is something we're looking at, but we are taking a pretty detailed look at, what do we want to do, what really makes sense. I think that project was a passionate project of the former director, and I certainly understand that, but at this time, I think the finances are it's difficult to justify. I've watched what's happened with the sign on Imperial, and I'm sensitive to that. So I really want to take a hard look at what do we really need there, and what is it going to cost to do that. But as Michael mentioned, these ADA improvements, I think, are going to, they're going to be required of us regardless, and we've got the funding for it.
I'm trying to
Oh, you got it. That's great.
zoom in
Yep.
here.
You got it, Michael.
Actually trying to identify where any
So,
rails would go.
If you go to the left, your left, see that circle, that's the patio I'm talking about, and the biggest grade would be coming from that parking lot along Mariposa down into that, patio.
So the path of travel itself is part of the scope, but the patio itself is not, because that doesn't require any ADA improvements based on the most recent assessment. But the path of travel, which is the scope of the grant, or the funding, is in the project scope.
Where's that center veranda? Is that
Right off the
Here.
Okay, so I think Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we're talking about, as long as it's not something about half that way towards Main Street, I think that's the area we're talking about, that's some serious clothesline potential.
Where the flagpole is. So,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, so where that flagpole is up, if you go, move your cursor up and then to the left a little bit, that's the flagpole. And that walkway from Richmond is lined with hedges. So if you're gonna put in railings, those hedges would have to be eliminated.
I don't see any call out for railings.
Where would the railings be?
That's what I'm looking for.
You can tell we
There's
also have spent many
construct
hours in the
metal-
library park.
Yeah, so there's the call outs here. So there is a construct metal handrail here.
No. We may need to continue this and talk about, is this, what's the time sensitivity on this?
This is the last council meeting before we can submit to the county. And we're encumbering last year's funding allocation and this year's funding allocation.
So the competing issues here are ADA compliance, and I fully understand what you're saying, because we've had issues in the park before where things happen, kids run into things, so it is concerning. And the hedge you just talked about taking out, I'd be recommending put a hedge that along that to buffer that railing so people won't run into the railing. I mean, you almost, if you've got kids running around, it's a concern. So, but this is the last night to make a decision, huh, Michael?
Yeah, so maybe we can come back at the first meeting in February. Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff, I mean, you should be, has the Parks and Recs Commission looked at this? Because they would have been able to raise those alarm bells early on.
Well, I'd say that this exact scope was approved as part of the earlier project that you mentioned with the art pieces. What we've done is we've pulled out the interactive piece, and we've only funded the
But I don't think we ever
non-interactive
talked about
piece.
putting railings on the
It
railings.
would have been required by law, because we're investing the money, you have to do ADA improvements.
It may not have been called out. I wasn't here during that time, but.
Okay, so this will come back in February?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
You want a
Public hearing
motion
is
to
over.
continue it, or?
Do we need to make a motion?
Public hearing was closed, right?
Yeah.
So
I
then
think we're
we'll be
good.
coming back to deliberate, okay, thanks.
All right, we are moving on here to item 10, El Segundo Fire Department 2022 Annual Report. Chief Lee.
Yes, Chief.
Mayor, members, City Council, Fire Chief Dina Lee here with our El Segundo Fire Department Annual Report. We'll get the PowerPoint queued up here. The annual report is a requirement of the accreditation process and in line with our strategic plan, and so you're going to be seeing this every year. Can I just do that? Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to talk about operations, training and workforce development, services delivered, community engagement, and a few additional accomplishments. Firstly, operations. I have a breakdown of the annual calls for service back to 2018. Consistently, we've been at 2,500 calls, averaging the last several years. In 2022, we're up to 3,077 calls, so that total incident count is up 16%. I brought this to you. The calls in Station 1 district and Station 2 have been about split. we're showing an increase in calls in Station 2 district. I would attribute that to Top Golf, reoccupying of the hotels, and a lot more activity in Station 2 district. You have this in your packet, and it's also available on our website. This is a breakdown that you've seen before of all of our incidents. I wanted to point out our average response time for the first El Segundo unit on scene is 5 minutes and 27 seconds, and our average call processing time is 1:07. And to define the call processing time, that's the time that the dispatcher receives the call, and then we get the tone in the station. So that would be routing to PD or fire and going through that process. Is this a medical emergency? And then hitting the tone. Our travel time is 4 minutes travel time. That's the gold standard for fire departments. That's excellent. To break that down just a little bit further so you get the total time, our turnout time, or the time it takes to get our gear on and get on the rig, is 1 minute and 20 seconds average. So that's about 20 seconds to walk to the rig, get fully geared up, and then we get to the rig and we have that 4 minute travel time. So this is an average. If we have an EMS call where we're just wearing uniform, it's a little bit faster with the turnouts, but I'm very proud of that 5 minutes and 27 seconds.
Can I ask you on that?
Yeah.
The call.
Go back.
Go back to your slide, sorry.
Where'd it go?
The
There we go.
1.7 and the 5, is that consistent with historical? Has that gone down, gone up? And is there an opportunity to shave off on the average call processing time?
That is the goal. So the accreditation process, like everything that we're doing, is a framework for continual improvement.
So now we have baselines
So
that we can
we have the
monitor.
baseline, yeah, and we could see that improving.
Okay.
Here, I wanted to show the unit utilization by each unit. So on the left there would be engine 31 and all the other units that we have. The only notable information there is that the unit utilization for truck 32 went up in 2021, and I would attribute that to, we started sending single unit to fire alarms instead of everyone. So their calls went up, and it's pretty much consistent with, some of those calls, like if you see at the bottom there, 5,000, we didn't go on 5,000 calls, but that breaks down each unit. So some of those, more than one unit was on the call, and so I just wanted to give you that information. Next, training and workforce development. We have in excess of 11,255 hours in training for 2022. I'm not going to go through all of the training accomplishments, but I'll highlight just a couple. I wanted to mention on the earthquake preparedness, we have an app now with the other fire departments throughout the region and the state, and it's called Survey 123. And so when there's an earthquake, and we do a windshield survey, so we mobilize, we assess the damage, and we put in the GPS coordinates so that if there's an earthquake in El Segundo and we're reporting all of this, they can see at the regional level and at the state level where the fire resources should go. So this is a big improvement for regional response. On these accomplishments, I wanted to just make a note that El Segundo Police Department, El Segundo Fire Department participated in multiple active shooter trainings together. So we're feeling really good about what we have prepared. We did one at the Air Force Base and a couple other locations. Workforce development, I just touched on, we had 2 firefighters complete probation. Like I had mentioned, we sent 1 firefighter to paramedic school, and we have 1 in school now, continuing workforce development. Oops, that slide. And in 2022, we hired and promoted 11 people in key positions. So we're busy. We have a lot of good people in very good positions, and it's going well. Just touch on the services delivered by our Fire Prevention Division and our Environmental Safety Division. The number of fire prevention inspections, that includes new construction inspections, annual inspections, and high-rise inspections. It's not on the slide, but 365 of those inspections were done by the suppression staff on the engine companies. So that's a total. Just to give you an idea of how many inspections, plan checks, and permits that those divisions deliver. Community engagement. We are still doing drive-by birthdays. We did 9. 12 fire station tours, and we hosted 4 firehouse dinners. Yeah, the child was not harmed. That's Allie's daughter. 5 school visits. We hosted 3 interns from the high school and 6 ride-alongs. The Girls Empowerment Camp, we're planning that for this year, our second annual, March 25th and 26th. It was so successful that we're going to go from 30 participants up to 50, and I'm collaborating with Rec and Park on that. Looking forward to that. Again, I won't go through every community engagement event. We had 2 story times. We had Captain Dennis and his crew at the library, and then we also had a story time with the poet laureate, Hope Anita Smith, at Station 1 for Father's Day. So those were very well-attended events. And here's some more of our community engagement events, and of course the annual pancake breakfast in collaboration with the El Segundo Firefighters Association successfully raised money for local charities. And we are making good progress on our strategic plan goals, and we're inching closer to that accreditation, to the being accredited, slowly inching there, but we are making progress. A few additional accomplishments. We reorganized the front office staff, and we've outsourced the billing so that we have improved efficiency and cost recovery. You know, the fire code adoption, and Victor Morales was here last meeting to talk about that Coupa 3-year audit, and then we did well on our annual EMS audit. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. It's great to see all the accomplishments kind of laid out. I mean, we all know and appreciate, but it's also nice to be reminded.
Yeah, and thank you. I was talking to your staff earlier about if we had any issues with flooding over the last couple days, and they said there was a couple, but a lot of, thanks to Parks and Recs as well as Public Works,
yeah.
We didn't have as many major issues. I don't know if anyone noticed that the holly and eucalyptus didn't overflood as it has historically. So you guys, thank you to your team and being proactive. Now, one of the things I would like for us to do this year, we haven't really talked really about earthquake preparedness in a while. I mean, I know that it's happening, but on a larger note, because everything's been on the pandemic. So I think it might be a good time for us to do some outreach and some letting people, talking about earthquake preparedness and what we can do, and make sure that the houses, people know how to turn off their water and their gas lines, and make sure that if there is a major earthquake, because we haven't had one now for quite a while, and I think our minds have been off of it because of the pandemic, and I think we now need to do that shift. And if we could do some earthquake preparedness outreach, that would be great.
Yeah. We're outfitting the EOC now. We're recovered from the pandemic, and we're going to make sure that that's ready to go. Our first CERT class is scheduled for April 1st, so we're back on track with those.
We got to get back on track with the disaster council meetings too. I think we
completely suspended those during COVID because the EOC was set up with the joint, with the, what's it called again? Joint Task Force, yeah. No, that's not the right word. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. We, in fact, we've just met last week, our crisis communications team, if you will, with our new communications manager, myself, deputy city manager, and the two chiefs to start talking about a whole range of emergency preparedness types of activities, both internally and external.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Great progress. All right, item 11, Building Forward Library Infrastructure Grant Resolution. Mr. George.
Yes, we will call back our Parks and Recreation and Library Director.
Great.
It is my night. I have the next two, I believe, so I apologize in advance. Good evening again, Honorable Mayor Boyles and members of the council. Tonight, staff is before you to seek approval for the adoption of a resolution to receive funding for the Building Forward Library Infrastructure Grant. The capital improvement program for fiscal years 21-22 through 25-26 identified 3 maintenance issues at the El Segundo Public Library that needed to be addressed for continued safe operations of the library. The 3 specific issues identified included waterproofing the south wall of the library from potential water damage, replacement of the elevator, and replacement of the HVAC system. The south wall experiences water intrusion issues at the ground level, which results in cracks, peeling paint, and crumbling materials. A powdery material also settles on the shelves in the books. Installed in the library's 1993 remodel, the elevator has reached the end of its life cycle, and breaks down intermittently. Replacement parts are difficult to find and can take long periods of time to acquire and install. During downtimes, people are unable to use the stairs and must exit the building and then re-enter from the park doors. Likewise, installed in the library's 1993 remodel is the HVAC system, which is also at the end of its life cycle. It is frequently breaking down and requiring lengthy periods of time for manufacturing new parts and repair work. During downtimes, the building becomes either too hot or too cold for patrons and staff. Estimates for the repair work, as shown in the capital improvement plan document, are as follows. South wall repair work at $125,600. Elevator equipment replacement at $190,400, and HVAC equipment replacement at $43,180, for a total of $359,180. For the 2021 California Library budget, Governor Newsom signed a bill to provide one-time funds of $439 million in support of California library infrastructure, safety, and critical maintenance projects. The funds are administered by the California State Library as the Building Forward Infrastructure Grant, which requires a 50-50 match from awardees. During the fiscal year 2021-2022 mid-year budget review, the City Council approved $200,000 be set aside by the Finance Department in anticipation of receiving an award. In February 2022, the library manager was directed to apply for a Building Forward grant in the amount of $179,590 for the wall, elevator, and HVAC work, with an additional $179,590 to be provided by the city. The El Segundo Public Library received an intent to award letter from the State Library in September 2022, and an acceptance package was received in November 2022. As a potential Building Forward grant recipient, the City of El Segundo is required to authorize a resolution to accept the terms of the grant, and staff are bringing the resolution to the City Council for their consideration. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Mancini. Any questions? No question, but I will state that the library wall has been on the capital improvements list of priorities for years. And so it's nice to know that it's finally get fixed, and it's even nicer to hear that we're getting some funding from a different source to help pay for that.
I agree. I'm very, very pleased that Mr. Herbert was able to work on this and get that funding. Very needed repairs.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's have the city attorney read the resolution.
Mayor and council, Mayor and council, a resolution approving acceptance and execution of SB 129 California State Library Building Forward Infrastructure Grant Funds for El Segundo Public Library repairs for accessibility and health is ready for adoption.
All right, who would like to move approval?
I'll move.
Great, thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. Anyone else need a quick recess? Are you guys all good? Good? Okay, I'm going to take a quick recess. Continue, please. I'll be right back. This
Okay.
is related to item 12, solicitation of requests for qualifications for planning, design, and engineering services for the Recreation Park renovation project.
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor
If
and
I could
members.
just really just interject real quick on this, council. This hopefully is an example of how we're going to do things. This particular project obviously is a big project that we've been planning for. You did your joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission back in September. So we're here tonight to begin to solicit qualifications for a firm, for a design team to design this. So making up a little bit for the plunge, this we recognize the sense of urgency and the desire of the council to move this along. So in addition, for this particular project, we are negotiating right now with a project manager who actually helped prepare this RFQ. So it freed up Ally and Elias, because they've had so the project manager will be charged with this, taking this from now moving forward. So I just wanted to interject that.
And would that project manager also be the same for the plunge, or would it be a
Well,
different project
I'm
manager?
thinking of that now, that we can do that. Let me talk with him, and that's a possibility. I mean, we've already working with him. He's excellent and very familiar with the construction process and development and so forth. So, yes.
I would check on that, because the construction of an aquatics facility is a little bit,
No, absolutely, and that's why it's a little different.
little dangerous, right?
I hear
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Yep. Okay, sorry, Ally.
Oh, no problem. All right, Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm very excited to be before you this evening, requesting approval to release a request for qualifications to solicit interest from qualified professionals for planning, design, and engineering services for the Recreation Park renovation project. The Recreation Parks and Library Department is seeking to renovate and improve Recreation Park to continue serving the evolving needs of the residents, and a detailed plan will be required to carry out this objective. Staff is requesting authorization to release an RFQ to identify a qualified design and engineering team to produce a comprehensive plan, including conceptual design and engineering plans for Phase 1 improvements, which include the Teen Plaza, including the Teen Center, the skate park, and the basketball court immediately adjacent to the Teen Center, improvements to Brett Field, Stevenson Field, and the softball field, including infield improvements, outfield improvements, scoreboards, lighting, fencing, and irrigation, and renovation and possible reallocation of the tennis, pickleball, paddleball, and racquetball courts. And finally, reimagining the underutilized section of Recreation Park, including the lawn bowling, the horseshoe toss, the beanbag toss, and the shuffleboard area. Staff anticipates a two-step process to select a project team, wherein the first step is a review of each team's qualifications. The selected teams shall have a successful track record of creatively and efficiently designing and implementing high-quality park and public facility projects. Staff will identify the teams with the strongest qualifications based on their project history, successfully implemented projects, and client recommendations. The highest scoring teams will then be invited to interview with city staff and to then submit a detailed proposal based upon discussions with staff. Assuming the achievement of a mutually acceptable agreement, staff shall recommend a project team and contract for City Council's approval. Staff proposes the release of the RFQ on January 18th, 2023, with interviews of the top firms taking place between February 6th and February 7th, and staff bringing an approval contract for council's consideration at the council meeting of February 21st. That concludes my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So one of the components, so that's gonna be a year, right? No,
No,
No, month.
it's going to be next month.
Oh, my God.
I'm going to be back to you next month.
No, no.
Oh, my God. like
We'll be back next month.
Yeah.
It's true.
I can't believe it.
Pinch yourself.
But can we ensure that we're just really utilizing the Parks and Recs Commission? I know you had said staff, but can we also make sure that we have a subcommittee from the Parks and Recs Commission on point? And then do we have a subcommittee from the council? Do we need to assign a subcommittee of the council to be part of this project as we move forward? So if we establish it now, or at least set that, so that way you don't always have to wait to come back to council. There could be meetings with the subcommittee to expedite things along.
So just to clarify, so you're suggesting potentially we would ask the commission to appoint maybe 2 members?
Correct.
And this body would appoint 2 members to work with staff on a subcommittee?
Correct, so that we can expedite things and we don't have to keep waiting to come back to the council.
That's a great idea.
Can I ask, does that actually expedite, or is that going to hold us up? And here's why I asked that, is only because I know that, like, Park and Rec Commission meets once a month, right?
Once a month, that's correct.
So unless it's going to be a special meeting, okay.
Then they wouldn't have to, if it's a subcommittee, they don't have to agendize it, they can just.
Well, if you're going to combine members of Park and Rec with City Council, then that will have to be Brown acted.
But they can meet as needed, right? If the city's like, we have a fork in the road, we need a decision, then we can agendize the
I
agenda, have that subcommittee meet, and then report back.
Yeah, but in the end, it still has to be a vote up here.
Yes.
No matter how you look at it, it has to be a vote up here. So even if it's 2 by 2, all that does is kind of run a little bit of, like a practice run for your presentation. But in the end, it's still got to make it. That's all. I just know that we have a tight, not a tight time. You have a good time frame because we've been looking for that. I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I'm just wondering if that's going to hold us up more than help us. That'd be my only concern. Or do you think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another?
Yeah, I think, I mean.
Okay.
No, I think we'll be okay.
Sounds good.
I think we'll be okay with that.
I think it would be.
To do it.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to kind of have that opportunity to run things by the bodies and.
We'll just fit it in. We won't add that to the equation. We'll just fit it in within
Yeah, we'll make sure.
the tight timelines that we're working.
Do we need to assign the subcommittee tonight?
Would they be able to do that tonight, Mark? Or would I need to?
Can we bring that back to next meeting? It's just kind of goes beyond the scope of this title, really. But we can.
I can bring it back at next meeting.
You're going through the RFQ process anyway, so we can get
Correct.
that done before.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you have an outlet to go to and call a meeting quickly.
In between.
In between council and.
That'd be
Parks and
really
Recs
helpful.
Commission, and at least you're you have a sounding board.
Absolutely. No, and I think the commission will greatly appreciate that, so I appreciate that recommendation.
Okay, any other thoughts or comments before we move to approve this request for an RFQ? Okay, so I'd like to move approval.
Pimentel, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Persick, second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
5-0, thank you. Okay, we're on to city clerk's not here. We covered everything, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Okay, except for an item under Councilmember Perstuck. So, anything to report from the city clerk's office?
Only that I wish the city clerk a speedy recovery. She's not been feeling well. And also, there are a couple important birthdays to mention. Mayor Boyles, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And also, happy birthday to El Segundo, which is 106 years old tomorrow.
Wow, awesome. All right, thank you. City treasurer's not here. Councilmember Baldino.
Just quickly, I want to report that I did meet with Davis Hahn, Samuel Lee of Ben Allen's office about Hyperion. There's supposed to be future meetings. I let them know about the pending litigation. And then what I'd like to have discussed maybe the next meeting is I think we need to do something proactive about the BT tax that's been passed as far as reaching out with the stakeholders, our hotels, to figure out how we're going to roll that in so we get a little buy-in from them. So that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Baldino. Councilmember Giroux.
Just to kind of jump on your point, Ryan, actually, we have a finance committee meeting tomorrow, and I think that's on our topic to discuss.
Great.
The BT reach out. Other than that, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perstuck, you have an item under your name.
Yes, approve, including the approve including the cultural development fee budget on the City Council Finance Subcommittee agenda. I brought this forward because I want to restructure the timeline to allow the council to develop a 2 to 5 year strategic plan for the arts and culture funds, and so that we can actually have some planning for funds. So working with Michael and the development department on anticipated or forecasted funds so that we can plan larger projects like the Plunge and putting money, art installation in the Plunge or art installation project at the Parks and Recs at the beginning of the project, so that we're just starting the Parks and Recs project, that we already earmark money like at a high level from that Arts and Culture Fund before it goes to the Arts and Culture Committee, so that we have just kind of restructure the timeline so that there's a little more long-term planning with the funds rather than just just annually spending the money. Sometimes there's bigger projects that we need to earmark that money from, and I just want to make sure that we do a better job at forecasting the anticipation of money and making sure we're allocating it to these bigger projects.
Okay, any questions or comments from my colleagues?
How is this changed from what they're doing now? They just have money and they spend it?
Yes.
And then we're told after the fact?
Well, so what the timeline today basically is they are given the amount of money that we're going to get. It goes to the Arts and Culture Fund or Committee, and then they present to us how they want to spend it. Well, I want to basically get in front of that.
I see.
And
Earmark certain amounts
earmark certain
towards
amounts for
projects.
larger projects, because it's kind of like if we have to think about, do we need a roof? Do we need air conditioning versus do we need a new curtains? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that, you see what I mean? Like, I want to look at the bigger projects, making sure that we're earmarking funds for the Plunge. When we're in the redesign of the Plunge, maybe we could put like a large mosaic wall in there.
Okay, it would be still used for art, just in a other
But it's
project.
for the Parks and Recs, we're in the beginning phase of that redesign. If we earmark funds for that, we can put when we do the skate park, maybe we anticipate putting in some type of art installation as a component of the new skate park. So it's embedded in the construction and the money's already predefined and earmarked using forecasting from Michael of anticipated construction.
Don't we to a degree already do that through the CIP process? And for instance, with the sign, that money, when we decided to build a sign, we allocated part of the budgeting plan for that was to allocate money from the Art and Culture Fund for a piece of permanent art. I mean, to a degree, we have a process for that. It involves the entire council, so it's slightly more cumbersome. But we run the risk of the finance committee being at odds with arts and culture with cherry picking projects. I mean, is that a conceivable outcome? I could be wrong, but.
I see your point. I think what we're getting to, it's almost like the bigger piece of that, I think, is the forecasting model. It's that we can kind of have an idea based on what's in the till right now on what it's going to look like. Right now, we're just kind of going year to year. So I think the finance committee piece of it is more along the lines of forecasting. Let's identify, is there something that's going to be needed for? And then, because right now, basically, we're saying, the Arts and Culture Committee, great committee, and they do a lot of great stuff, but all of a sudden, it could be $1 million in that thing. And, okay, how do we spend $1 million? Or do we sit there and say, you know what, we're going to need $80,000 that goes to a mural at the skate park, and we're going to need $100,000 to redo the benches or whatever it is, or some kind of art installation. So we want to earmark that now. And then the balance of it would go to them to do the, the festival holidays and the events and the things they put on. So I think that's, if I'm hearing you correctly, we just kind of want to be able to forecast what we might need and try to earmark things up front, and then give the balance to the committee to make their plans. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If I devil's advocate a little bit more, isn't that also a bit of the role of the council liaison on that committee?
That would be me. Which is why I'm suggesting to put it to a finance committee.
No, because, you know, the problem is that the arts and culture with the liaison is talking about current or like in 1 year in advance. What I want to do is take a 5-year plan look at the potential revenue, because a lot of these construction plans are already in the hopper, and so we can anticipate and identify funds for these larger projects. So when we go to do the redesign of the Parks and Recs, which we're going to start, thank you, Ally and Elias, they know that we are earmarking X amount of money for art in the project, so it's already embedded in there at the beginning of the prior to the beginning of the construction. The same with the Plunge. I mean, we talk about the, at the Plunge, we have the, you know, one of the things about was the entryway. Well, I mean, this is a historic building which has beautiful mosaics or, you know, Art Deco. We should be identifying money for Art Deco within that design, so it's already preset, and that we're not going after the fact asking for the money from the arts and culture. So it's for these bigger projects, and that we earmark these money for these bigger projects.
Any other comments? Someone like to make a motion?
Can I motion? So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Doesn't matter, but what's your vote?
I said aye.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I said aye.
I would vote no, just because I think it's something we already do. I think it's slightly duplicative, but it's...
Got it. Thank you. 4-1. Okay. Okay, next up, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel. Comments?
Few things. We have a meeting coming up with the COG to find out the best way to continue our efforts to get infrastructure and job acts infrastructure money into the South Bay. Transportation projects for Measure R and Measure M funding. Those project ideas are due to the COG for allocation. That's a significant amount of money for all of our cities, and important for us. They'll be picking those projects to endorse or allocate money to within the COG for Measure M in February, Measure R in March. And that particularly affects Park Place, which is a significant investment by the COG and by the region. We received an in-depth presentation about rail improvements in the area and how state and federal rail money is spent. As you would imagine, the amount of money is staggering, as are the timelines. But most germane to us is things that affect the Green Line and the theorized expansion of Green Line trains to 2- and 3-car platforms. So 3-car platforms and 3-car trains are much heavier, requires a lot more electricity, requires the replacement of the electrical overhead lines from here to Norwalk, and longer platforms. Will any of that come to fruition? You know, get me talking about trains, but it's out there with some due dates of expected completion of 2052. So hold your breath. But the maintenance on the joints of the rails, those will go on, because we're at the 30-year mark on most of those rail joints, which means huge parts of the Green Line will have to be shut down while they replace all the rivets that connect the different rail ties. And sanitation district is up tomorrow. Most important to us is that there is still an ongoing litigation with an individual in the desert over our composted landfill. There's significant judgment that went against the LA County Sanitation District, of which we're a member of 2 boards, for a very hefty 8-figure sum. We are appealing, and I will have an update as much as I can share in an open session at the next meeting. But it's a lot of money, and because we sit in 2 different districts for it, we get hit twice on our allocation for that. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Happy birthday.
Thank you. The only significant regional meeting that, development I should say, is the SCAG, Southern Cal Association of Governments Regional Council, recently was presented on. They are tasked with reallocating or redefining the RHNA, which is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation methodology, and how we allocate, or how homes are allocated additional housing needs to different jurisdictions and cities, and that project is being delayed. So we got a project on that, where they're at and why it's being delayed. And that's all I have this evening. More to come on that. City Attorney?
Nothing this evening, Mayor, thank you.
City Manager?
Only thing is the Finance Committee is meeting on Thursday, not tomorrow, just to let you know. And regarding RENA, I don't know if I want to, if our Community Development Director wants to say nothing at this point on the housing element?
He knows not to get me started on the housing element.
Gotta be careful.
No, I think this is pretty good, though.
Yeah, so over the weekend, we received correspondence from the State Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, who informed us that our housing element is mostly compliant with all statutory requirements. They, however, will not certify the element until we complete the R3 and mixed-use housing overlay. So we are otherwise, we've received a letter of conformance with the exception of they will update that to certifying it when we complete the rezone or the housing overlay zone. So that's a big
That's great.
lift for the city, and then thank you, Mr. George. But yeah, it's a big lift for staff, and we're appreciative of the support of the commission and the council, and we don't need to talk about HCD anymore.
A lot of cities are still waiting for that, right?
Yeah, and we have work to do. The work's not over, as I've shared before. This is the beginning of a 8-year-long conversation, and so we will need to go back to them. There's reporting requirements, there's deliverables that we have to make every year moving forward as it relates to meeting the objectives of the housing element. And so first and foremost will be the mixed-use housing overlay and the R3 overlay zone. So you'll see that before you in the next several months.
Excellent. All right, we are adjourned at 8:31 p.m. Thank you.